Hi, everybody. Hello, everybody. We're here with our webinar Wednesday talk with David Merrell of AOO Events. We'll take a few minutes to let people come into the chat room, and we're looking forward to having lots of folks join us. And we welcome people to also ask questions throughout the presentation. And David's happy to answer any questions that you might have and help you sort of redefine and focus in on your design needs over the next 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm going to chat with you a little bit. I'm going to make sure we've got some folks coming into the room. But I would like just to introduce David to everyone. David is a 25-year veteran of the events industry. He has a very successful event planning business, event design firm called AOO Events. He's got over 13 internal staff as well as hundreds of event partners that he works with to create events all over the world. He also has been very active with the International Special Events Society, serving in leadership both internationally and on a local level. And he's always got some great new ideas to share. His blog Design Dogs is an awesome wealth of experience for folks that want inspiration on design. So I invite you all to take a peek at that after our webinar. So I'm going to turn over to David and let him get started. And as I mentioned earlier, feel free to type any questions that you have over into the chat box, and we'll go ahead and bring those live during the course of the presentation. So David, over to you.
Hello, how are you? I'm really excited to be doing this with you today, Jill, and hello everybody. A few corrections on your, just a few minor corrections. I have been in business for 25 years, but I started when I was 3, so do the math. The Design Dogs you mentioned was a blog, actually was converted from a blog to a magazine about 6 to 8 months ago. And the difference is that now I have a full-time editor and a number of managing editors. I have tons of content coming in from around the globe, and we're searching for more. I'm looking really now for international contributors. I've got a couple in South Africa, I've got one in Australia and one in Canada, but we're looking in the Pacific Rim and some other areas, so we can have a nice, well-rounded group of design ideas and inspiration coming in from all over the globe. But it's turned into a magazine now, so we're really excited about that. That was actually part of all the changes I'm making within my company, which I've mentioned. I'm making a lot of changes right now. So before we start, again, what Jill mentioned is that feel free to ask any questions at any time. In fact, they're probably relevant at the time that we're giving one of these tips. Would love to talk about it and have a dialogue about it. So that's what this is meant to be, is an open dialogue. And the tips you see today are just a few of many tips that I use on a regular basis. And they're not tips that you could only use if you have $1 million budget. They're tips you can use if you have tiny little budgets. They're ideas that you can take with you into any type of event, any type of budget, and use the practice of that tip for that. And then there's some more tips at the end on presenting. It goes beyond design, Jill. It's also about presenting as well. So let's get started. Okay.
I'm going to
I have a PowerPoint.
interrupt for a second, David. We're also going to be doing polls while this is going on. So you might see a little question come up, and we're going to ask a question, and there'll be yes or no answers. So please participate in that so we can kind of know what the general consensus is or what the audience is doing in general for some of these questions.
Okay, perfect. And also, since my seminars tend to be very visual, we actually do have a screen share, so there are going to be times when you're not going to see my mug. You're going to see some pictures I bring up because I want to illustrate the point. So there'll be some eye candy as well, which is exciting. And
Awesome.
then this entire seminar or this entire webinar, you're going to be posting in addition to the video itself. Is that correct?
Yes, after this, we will edit this as a final video and have it on the Special Events Institute YouTube site, which we can email everyone. And we'll have both the PowerPoint and your audio presentation.
Okay. Okay. Is everyone okay? Perfect. So tip one is the tip that I give every single time when it comes to event design and production, and that it really is not about your product and how good your product is. It's really the best tip I can give anybody, and if you take nothing else away from this, your job is to create the right experience for the client. And let me explain what I mean by that. We are a customer service industry, and we are a customer service industry first and foremost. And I think we forget that a lot of times, and that we can have amazing products. And I would say we have a very good product within the company. I have some amazing people working for me, and we put out a very good product. But there's a lot of people that put out a very good product, and the difference is whether you have created an experience that wants them to work with you again. I like to work in corporate because I want people to come back and work with me more and more. So I pay more attention to this than if you were working on the social side in weddings. You may not have that family come back unless they have another child to get married in the future. But I'll give you a real quick example of a perfect way of looking at this. I'm looking at two different actors. One is Tom Hanks, and the other one is Val Kilmer. And Val Kilmer, I would say, arguably, is probably one of the best actors in the world. Tom Hanks, not the best, but who's working all the time? Tom Hanks is working all the time. And the reason why Tom Hanks is working all the time is because he is easy to work with, he's likable, and there's a level of professionalism and integrity that comes with everything he puts his name to, and so everybody wants to work with him. Not quite the same for Val Kilmer. We don't need to go into that. You could go and see all the reasons online. But arguably probably one of the best products as an actor in the world, but yet he's not working nearly as much. So again, for me, if you learn nothing else from this, it is that you have to create the right experience for your clients. You have to be likable. You have to be professional. You have to make sure that your integrity is intact. And that is way more important than the product you deliver. It's important that if you say you're going to deliver something, that's exactly what you deliver. If you're going to promise something, then you give a little bit more. Overpromise or underpromise and overdeliver. I like to think of aiming high and shooting higher versus, because I don't like to underpromise. But you always make sure you give at least what they expected and more. And for a designer and me, if I walk into a room and that room feels even better than I envisioned in my head, then I have done my job. And that's the experience. So for me, the experience of my high is walking into space and going, yeah, this is even better than I envisioned. And the client should have the same thing. This experience, not just the end product, but the entire experience was way better than what I envisioned, and I definitely want that again. So tip number one, I can't emphasize it enough.
Yeah, I think, David, too, for all of us, knowing what your brand is and really speaking to that when you make proposals or deliver ideas, understanding what you're really good at and who you are is like the most essential thing.
Yeah, you do need to take stock of what your strengths and weaknesses are and understand them completely. It's one of the things that I went through. Believe it or not, being in this business for 25 years, there's a lot of peaks and valleys with every business. And when the economy hit in 2009, I was about 22 to 24 employees with a very large overhead. And we were just basically going along and doing really well because there was so much business out there. and skirting, because there's so much business, and skirting over issues or inefficiencies that didn't become too much of a problem because there was just so much business that we lost a little money here, or we lost a little bit of inefficiency there. When the economy hit, I had to take a huge stock in what product I had, what I was doing, where I was going, and basically have been going through a rebranding process ever since. The first step was removing Design Dogs as a blog because it already had a following. I won't go into the thoughts behind it, but turning it into a magazine and letting it stand on its own, and now has a staff of 3, which is separate from the 12 or 13 employees you were talking about, and that runs on its own. And now we're going through a complete rebranding of AOO Events, which is going to have a new website coming out, hopefully in about a month and a half. But it was me looking at, okay, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, how have I evolved in the industry, how are people perceiving me now, and then taking stock of that, and then changing course and changing direction accordingly. See, I will never run out of things to say, so we will fill up this 45 minutes to an hour, no problem. So the tip number 1 was making sure you create the right experience for the client, and never forgetting that you are in the customer service industry, number 1, before you ever deliver a product. Tip number 2 is designing to the space. I don't know how many times that I have been working with a client, and they take me into a space that they want a certain theme, and the space is just completely fighting the theme. Or they want something that just doesn't fit the space at all. I had one person that took me in to the Crazy Horse Saloon and wanted a futuristic theme. Not quite a match. We were fighting from the beginning. But now, you know, corporations and everyone, corporations now wanting to be more conscious in how they spend their money. Doesn't mean they won't spend the money. In fact, they will spend more money to actually make it appear that they're not spending as much. So now, when I go to stand in a space, I will be with the client, and then I will take extra time on myself and sit in the space and just kind of take it in and see what personality comes out. You know, I have a good example over here, and I'm going to go to a screen share so you guys can hear me talking.
And I'm going to also add a poll question.
Oh, perfect. Okay, we'll have a couple screen shares, and then we'll go back to the pool question. Okay, dismiss any. It didn't come up, so let me try it again. Screen share and start screen share. Now you can see it. This is the Scripps Institute in San Diego, and I was with a client there, and they wanted me to create an event. It was coming right out of the the economic downturn, and they wanted to make sure this was VIP clients. They wanted to make sure that this was a VIP event, but they were really concerned about the perception of spending too much money. So they wanted me to really design what was right for the space. So I did the walkthrough, and you're going to see a couple of quick pictures here. There's a couple of the pictures. And by the way, when I do site inspections, I always have my camera with me, because if I don't have my staff with me, I'm just scrolling through some of the pictures, first and second floor. Obviously a very modern building. And like I said, I take it everywhere I go. In fact, you can see that's me in that mirror taking a picture right there. This picture in particular was important to me because I do a lot of before and afters, and you're going to hear me talk about before and after pictures a lot. Because when I look at a space, I'm going, okay, what am I going to do with this space? If I know that there's going to be a treatment here, I'll make sure that when I take a picture before, I'm very conscious of where to take the picture. So when I take the picture afterwards, and by the way, that's the exact same spot, that your client will see the transformation between one and the other. Now, obviously, this was, I needed to basically turn this into a dining area. And so with the simple use of fabric and one very large gobo, was able to take the palm leaves that were all around the, looking at all the palm trees around the perimeter. Well, you can't see them in these pictures, but you can see that there were palm trees everywhere. And just extending that into the building and going with something very, very simple. Again, before and after picture. This is the after picture, and I'll show you a few more. I saw that there was an amazing wood feature in this place. It's like, okay, let's just spend a little bit of money and highlight the wood feature by dropping some lights on it. In this case, that was a custom gobo that was made from the invitation that we cut into a metal gobo. And if you're not familiar with gobos, basically a gobo is a flat sheet of metal that you slide into a light, and you can laser cut any logo, any design you want into it. It projects that image onto the wall, which is what you're seeing here in the picture. And then outdoors, we basically just added some hedgerows and made it look like this was an indoor-outdoor dining experience. Made sure the chairs were fitting the style of the place, and basically created a space that was an indoor-outdoor dining experience, first class for the guests, without it looking like they spent a lot of money. Here's the image shot at the end. This won a couple awards for decor and for lighting. And it was just because I was highlighting the building itself and the architecture and not fighting it. So it was site inspection with a client. I got all the information. Do you mind if I spend some extra time in here? And then I'm going back to me. There it is. I'm
just going to throw out that I gave the poll, so if everybody could just vote on the poll, are you responsible for coming up with your design concept? And then I'll close it and we'll see what the answer is on that.
Great. Okay. So yeah, it's always good to know who I'm talking with. Am I talking with the designers or the people that work with the designers? Always good to know. While we're waiting for the poll, should we go to tip 3?
Sure. I'll just say 71% said that yes, they are responsible for coming up with the design concept for their clients. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay.
While some may work with designers, they have the responsibility of being that point person. And it might start, like you said, with the marketing materials and taking that design, like your beautiful logo on the top, and bringing it right forward into the actual design at the event.
Yeah. In fact, I didn't really, in these top 10 tips, I really didn't address, except when we get to Pinterest at the end, I didn't really address how we present our ideas to the client. Whole nother conversation. So we're not going to be talking about that today, but there's an art in just the presentation itself. So, okay. So tip number 3 is basically the use of fabrics. And, you know, we have in Los Angeles, it is a port city. We have the most amazing wholesale fabric market I've ever seen in the world. But they exist everywhere, and you can find them in all parts of the country. Maybe not as fantastic as this, but there's also resources online that can get you inherently flame retardant materials. These are fabrics that I use all the time, and fabric is something I work with a lot. Number one, because I know how to work with it, and it was by working with some drape companies and fabric companies, watching what they do, talking with them about how they do it, that I learned how to work with fabric. But also, I find that fabric is a great way to accomplish a number of things. You can break up a very large room, which I'm going to show you an example of that. In fact, why don't I switch over right now and show you that. Screen share.
I'll throw another poll question up about fabric, too.
Okay, great. This is a simple picture of a very large ballroom. This is the Hyatt in Denver. It has about 25 to 28 foot ceilings, and it holds a good 2,500 to 3,000 people. So you imagine when you're standing in this space, it's just a huge cavernous space. So I'm always looking for ways to break up a space, to create more intimate environments, to create these walls where I can have seating on one side. In this picture, I have seating on one side, and on the other side I have the buffets, and I bring them out in the space. the most powerful impact would be able to hang them from the ceiling and have them going from ceiling to floor, the entire thing. But many times your footprint does not allow, the footprint and the hang points don't line up. So I like to work with pipe and base. And this is a very, very simple trick. This fabric, I believe, I either got from Rose Brand, which is rosebrand.com, or I got it from Daisian.com. I love to work with sheer materials. This is a sheer material that has a texture. I love to work with shears for a reason, is because you still can kind of see through, so it doesn't close off the space. If I showed you this same picture and I had a solid fabric up there, it would feel so enclosed, but you still feel like there's more work beyond. So I use fabric a lot to break up spaces, and you can do them very simply with pipe and base. Just a note that you should always make sleeves that go on the sides of the pipe and base, so you're not seeing the mechanics of the upright pipe and base pieces. So we're just saying chocolate sleeves on the side and then sewn pockets on the top to create these, break up these spaces. This is a very, very inexpensive way to do things. And I'm going to come back to me. There I am. But also, you know, there's other ways to use the space, and you can soften a room as well. And I'm going to go to another one, screen show, and show you just a simple, and look, this is something that, are we in? We're in, okay. Look at these pictures here, and there's two pictures divided down the middle. This is one event, before and after, and another event before and after. Same client, different locations. This one I believe is the Tampa Convention Center, and this one is in Phoenix Convention Center. But when we're standing in the space, in fact, you'll see the top left picture is me standing in the space with the client and going, how can you make this look inviting? And they're just not seeing it. They're not seeing what we see every day. And so if nothing else you see before and after, I send these pictures out all the time just saying, you see the ugly space? This is what I can do with it. It happens in a lot of different ways. Obviously, we did floor coverings in both of these, but taking away nothing else from this, before and after pictures are very, very, very powerful. But something as simple as drape. In the left-hand side picture where the cursor is going, you see there's basically a white drape, which I love to work with white because then you can color it any way you want. And then on the left side, I work with a light gray velour. Now there's some amazing fabric companies, including your rental companies in your own cities, but there's also the two I mentioned, Daisian and Rose Brand, also have rental divisions that you can rent from, and there's also West Coast and Quest Drape rentals that are also available as well. In fact, this one on the right-hand side was done by Quest Drape in Tampa. I like Quest Drape because they're a national company, so I get the same discount whatever city I'm going into, and I've got a consistent product. So that's another way of using. I'm back. There we go. Oh, I'm getting the hang of this, Jill.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Other ways to use fabric when you have a really high ceiling. One of the problems with a very expansive room is that it feels impersonal. So you want to be able to drop the ceiling down. And so creating swags in a space, and it doesn't even have to be solid, just bringing the ceiling down and then lighting those swags will let everything above it go away. So I love to bring down the ceiling that way. And then enclosing and partitioning a room. If you got a room that's too big, there's an easy way to enclose it. So if nothing else, and this is such a simple tip, and you can use this with rental companies and anything else, fabric can be one of your best friends and can help you in so many different ways. And the first way I showed you is a way that's not used too often, but those, I have probably 10 different types of sheer fabrics in stock at all time that I can create window treatments with. I can create partitions, and they're all pocket sewn already, and they can go out to any type of party and just basically break up the event and make it a little bit more intimate.
I really love that you also said the inherently fire retardant, because that can make or break an event. If you have a fire inspector come in, if you're at a public building, and they do a burn test and it fails, that could be a problem. So that was really, really awesome that you said that.
Yeah, well, in California it's even a bigger deal because we're so drought heavy out here, and the fire department is a little crazy when it comes to fire, so they check everything. They fire test a lot of stuff. So you either have to go to a fire retardant company that will treat all your fabrics, and then you got that gook all over your hands. Or I like to buy inherently flame retardant materials, which is actually labeled, I think it's IHR, inherent or flame retardant, or IHFR. But they'll tell you which ones already are. So you get a certificate with it, the fire marshal's happy, right on the back.
Someone came up with a question. Is
Yeah.
drape ever reused between clients?
Is what? Drape? Oh, always. And this is why it's such a big business for the rental companies. Yes, it's absolutely reused all the time. It's not something that is a tablecloth that you're eating off of, so it's on a wall. A lot of times drape is lighted or lit up, and so the toughest part with drape is if you don't have something that has a texture in it. Like the only drape we carry in-house is Penne Velvet. It's P-A-N-N-E, Penne Velvet, which is a very light velvet, but it's also like you could scrunch it up and it would even get better. It's like those shirts that used to be like all wrinkled. You didn't want to iron them out. It's great because it holds texture, and the reason why I like it is because light plays off of it so well. So I work with Penne Velvet. But any rental companies are using velvet, or they're using what they call banjo drape, which is a little bit what are called convention taffeta, is another name for it. And the reason why they use those is because they can roll them back up and they just kind of open back up again. So we have one drape that is a what's it called? It's a Dupioni silk type. It's Dupionique, which is like Dupioni silk but cheaper. So we have to it costs more because we have to actually keep it on rolls and roll it up at the end versus just folding it. Mm-hmm. So it takes a little bit more manpower, so it gets a little bit higher price. But you have to be careful the way you store these things. But drape is always used over and over and over, for sure.
I was just going to add, as a planner, there may be times that you decide there's going to be two types of drape that I'm going to invest in. I'll sew the pockets, or I'll have it sewn, and I will keep it for, if I know I'm going to do 3 tented events and they'll fit on the inside of these tents, maybe. But for the most part, if you're just an event planner and not someone who has like a production warehouse, that would be something that you would let a designer, you'd rent from a designer, or let a designer take care of.
That's a really good point. I have a 12,000 square foot warehouse here. So I pick and choose the things that I want to make money off of and not. And, drape is a little bit of an animal in itself to install. So what we keep in-house is only 26 feet in length, because we've got those big ballrooms and it's hard to find fabric of that length. You can find it up to 16 feet because pipe and base only goes to 16 feet before it starts to become wobbly, and you have to either hang it from the ceiling or come up with other ways of hanging it, because a pipe and base only goes. So drape typically only goes to about 16, 18 feet. So we keep all of our drape at 26 feet, and we only keep white, black, and gray. Just the 3 main colors. Beyond that, I would rather go to the experts that know what they're doing and let them maintain the product themselves. Yeah. So tip number 4 is about textures. And, textures are something I talk about a lot because basically textures are a trick for the eyes. There are ways that they draw your eyes to them. They make you want to touch. They create layers. And so for me, I love to work with textures. And there's so many different ways to work with textures. Textures come obviously in the way of creating food and food palettes. And it's a little tougher there because some people like certain textures and some don't when it goes in your mouth. But you can also have textures in linens. You can have textures in physical props, and you can create textures in lighting. I'm going to show you a couple very, very quick examples of that. Screen share, and let's go to the next page. There's the phone, a Skype caller right now. We'll just let that go.
My
phone is right here. it'll go into voicemail in a second. The first picture you're seeing is basically just showing textures. Basically, this was an entrance that had to be up for about 2 days. So I had to go to it's a plastic or silk product and create this ivy and fabric all over the place because they wanted something that was, first off, the theme was Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, so they wanted something that was just kind of overgrown, and for me it was all about the textures in the entrance that kind of set the tone for the entire event. This was inside the event, so we brought textures in, obviously into the flowers themselves, but also into the linen. This is a linen from BBJ. I can't think of the name of it at the moment. It's Imperial Jacquard, G-A-C-A-R-D, I think it's called. And it's a reverse side. I love the linen, but it's amazing textured linen. And then showing textures in another way. This is a ballroom that has textures in it already. Look at the ceiling treatments already have textures, and if you can see beyond the fact that I've projected all over the wall textures, even the walls themselves were textured. There were different layers within it. And then I overlaid lighting projections and textures over top of it, and then brought textures in. You see I brought the fabric out into the space again in these divider walls. Even in the fabric, there was a texture, and then I projected a texture onto that fabric. It just creates more interest. And you say you can do textures with lighting. This is a perfect example. Remember the event I just showed you before, the Midnight of Garden of Good and Evil. They wanted to have plants all the way around the perimeter and just create this huge jungle, but they didn't have the budget for that. I said, well, I can do that with lighting. And they also had an ugly wallpaper behind it. So I was able to disguise the wallpaper. You can actually see the wallpaper in this picture above the projection. The reason you're able to see it is because the aperture of the camera needs to stay open longer when there's a dark room to capture everything in the room. So it lightens up even the back wall, but to the naked eye, you couldn't see that wallpaper. In fact, we cut the lighting right at the top of the drape. Again, this is white drape. I used just a simple bare branch pattern that you can buy from Rosco.com. I think it's ROSCO.com. And there's a couple others. If you type in Gobos, G-O-B-S, it'll bring you up 5 different companies that all sell gobos, metal gobos, and that you can buy these online. This particular gobo is only $15. So I bought about, I think, 10 gobos. So for $150, I handed these gobos to my lighting guy and said, project these.
Yeah.
And it created this texture on the walls that I would never have been able to accomplish a room of that perimeter without that.
Lighting is a great way to get a bang for your buck, as they say.
Yeah, it is.
And also, it's really effective time-wise, setup and so forth. You know, you don't have to ship a bunch of plants in or still tops all the time if you use your lighting effectively.
Well, and I'm going to talk about lighting because I'm extremely passionate about lighting. But yes, it is the least expensive way to cover huge areas. So I work with it a lot. So tip number 5, do we have another poll going? Or?
I have a poll, but I'll add one about lighting.
Yeah, I have the one about lighting, which is coming up in, I think, tip number 8 or 9. But let's go to tip 5 where you're doing another poll. And that is to create focal points within the space. You know, the events that I'm showing you today on the screen are some of the events that didn't have the larger budgets, because you have to be more clever with events where you have a very small budget than when you have a large budget. You know, how many times have you been given an entire ballroom to decorate and they give you $5,000 in props to decorate it? So what you do is like, okay, how do I make this work? And you kind of spread them all around the space to kind of fill it up, and you lose the energy of what you're trying to do. So tip number 5 is create focal points. Put all of your energy and money into prominent vignettes. Create gathering spots. let me give you an example. If I don't have a very large budget, the first thing I will do is try to create a focal point in the middle of the room, and I usually do like a big island bar. Even if there's nothing in there, I'll make sure that the hotel does great glass displays, and I'll do a bar that's out in the middle of the space. Kind of like the concept of when you have a party at your house, everyone's in the kitchen. They just kind of go to where the food and the beverage are. Everyone will hang around the bar. So everyone's hanging at the bar. I'm going to stick that bar out in the middle of the space and create a lot of energy right in the middle of the space. But instead of spreading the bars around the room, even if you can't put it in the middle of the space, you could put 3 bars in one area and create a big focal point, put 3 bars in another area, create another focal point. And then also with buffets, if I don't have a lot of money and I don't even have enough money to put, a $600, $500 arrangement on the buffets, which would be something great, I will make sure that I do 2 or 3 buffets together, maybe 2 buffets side by side, and in the middle I put a big arrangement there. So at least the decor goes to a focal point centered around the food. So it's about creating focal points. I'm going to give you another quick example. We're going to go into... I'll give you 2 quick examples, and these are premieres, Hollywood premieres, where you don't get a lot of money, and I'm just showing you 2 here real quick. Basically what you're seeing is that this one's for Disney, and this one is for New Line. You don't get a lot of money on these things sometimes. And so they actually give you about, they say, okay, you got $100,000, it's 1,500 people, but you have to feed everybody, you have to put beverage on the table, you have to put a band in here, and you have to do decor. So when you get right down to it, there's not a lot of money for decor left. So the best bang for the buck is to put all the money right down the center, the energy right down the center. In this picture you're seeing right here, because it was Disney, and we had digital, we had all the digital creations that they could make, basically took an image of the city. This was for Meet the Robinsons, something like that. I can't think of the name of it right now. But I took an image from them, a digital image, and projected that onto the wall. And if you can see in the bottom part of that projection, the band is standing there. So that's a 30-foot high projection. And then I just put these spheres down the middle of the room and just lit them up. If you can look at the sides of that tent, there's nothing there because I didn't have the money to do it. So all the money, all the energy down the middle of the space, creating a focal point. This is another one. This is at the Directors Guild, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences building, which is on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. They have an amazing 1,500-seat theater there, but they empty them out into this smaller area. And basically, it was given so much money for lighting and decor. So I put all the money right down the center. I put the buffets in the center. I even put the sitar player right in the middle of the space and electronically sent the signal of his music back to a space so there was no trip hazards across. But all the money, all the lighting right down the center. If you looked around the perimeter, there's nothing there. So creating focal point is a really powerful way to make your money go a long way. Some people will, I'm just manipulating to the next one. Some people will, spend money in areas where they don't need to. A lot of people will ask for entrance treatments and they want to do something really, spend a lot of energy and time on that. And I say, look, if it's a pass-through, if it's something that your client or your guests are not going to spend a lot of time with, maybe that's not where you should spend the money. If it's a pass-through, maybe it should be not much money spent on the entrance, and let's do something big and grand inside where they're going to be living for the next 2 to 3 hours. So focal points, big tip. Do you have any polls? Are we going on?
Yeah, what kind of poll? I was going to ask folks how many people are presented with large open spaces that they have to fill. So I'll ask that question. I'll pop that out there. A lot of times we're lucky to have something that might be already quasi-decorated that can hurt or help you. Sometimes an open space is great, but then you have to fill it. So
I love open spaces because then the possibilities are endless. And I like open spaces because it allows you to go big and create something spectacular. There's nothing more fantastic than floor-to-ceiling fabric coming down, just dramatic fabric swags coming down and just kind of lining the perimeter. Not even if it's solid, but if it's just like a sheer 10-foot panel and then another 15 feet, another sheer 10-foot panel, lighting those up just kind of creates a decadence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love to work with large spaces. In fact, every time I get to go into an arena, I'm like a kid in a candy store.
Sometimes that's scary. You know, people see the large space and they think, oh, what can I do with it? But on the other hand, if you think of things like more is better or less is more, like, you know, think of some conceptual things. If you have one item that you repeat over and over, like your gobos of branches on the wall, or you have that one center focal piece, people are drawn to it and they don't notice kind of the other things that might not be quite as decorative around the edges.
Yeah, and you know, I think one of the key spots is, I know how many times I stood in an arena with the client up in the back looking at the entire arena and go, holy macro, it's so big. Just go down to the floor and sit on the floor for a little bit, and you'll start to realize that all that goes away, and that really you're living in a microcosm of this entire arena. So the idea is to just kind of bring it in visually, and there's so many ways to do it cheaply. So anyway, okay, tip number 6, and I know you have
so the poll,
83%.
yeah. Oh, let me make this public. So 83% do have large empty spaces that they might have to fill, but there's some of the viewers still have smaller type venues that they maybe work with.
Yeah, I love to go big. I love to design with large elements. I'm not going to really talk about a lot of those today because we don't have the time. But tip number 6 actually goes just the opposite of that. And tip number 6 is the devil is always in the detail. I'll give you I'm going to give you a quick story. I was doing an event in Wyoming in, oh my God, what's the ski resort up there? I'm drawing a blank. Ski resort in Wyoming. And we had an event we were doing at the top of the mountain one day, and it took 2 days to get up there. We literally had to load the gondolas, and we had a crew at the bottom loading the gondolas that never stopped, and another crew at the top taking the stuff out. Took 2 days to get everything up there. Very, very detailed sit-down dinner, very high-end. Very, very proud of this event, and we brought up everything from chameleon chairs to chargers from BBJ to linens from Wildflower. We did our flowers up there, so we had our floral crew go up. It was a lot of work and a lot of detail to make this beautiful event, which I'm not going to show you the pictures of. But the last day, when the client went up, they said, you know, we have this gobo. Our guests are really proud of the logo that we have. We want to be able to display this. And I'm looking at the walls. I'm going, okay, I had just put these vintage ski photos in black and white on these beautiful wood walls. Had pin spotted the
Photographs.
The photographs, thank you. And uplight the beautiful wood walls. We had this vaulted ceiling with the rafters through it. We had a very busy wall and surrounded by windows. I had no place to project this. And I was literally standing in the room going, where the heck am I going to project this? And I looked out the window and I saw that there was a mountain out there, and I turned to my lighting guy and said, can we project on that? And they said, yeah, we probably can. It will read once it gets really dark. So we took the projection and we projected it onto the mountain, which was basically a ski slope facing that we projected onto, and it did read. And wouldn't you know that the only thing they talked about was that damn logo and not all the work I did for days.
Yeah, right.
And it reminded me, and I have like 4 or 5 stories like this, reminds me of the fact that the devil is in the detail, that what's important to the client in the minutest or right down to the level where they can touch and feel it is as important as grandiose. And I forget that all the time. It can be something as simple as the valet handing a rose to the lady when they get in the car at the end of the night. It can be something as simple as the logo imprinted on chocolate that's on the dessert. But the details really do matter with the client. So the devil's in the details.
And if you have something that is branded, like a logo, or you know, you're considering the colors that they have. So doing your homework, like what you kind of said at the beginning, if you do your homework up front and you really know what your client wants, who your client is, then yeah, it makes you look good, makes them look good.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have the next tip is about lighting. So let's do the poll on lighting now.
Okay.
The one question I had for everybody, and do you have that question up? Let's see where. Oh, here it is.
You want me to do about lighting?
Yeah.
How about if I
This is
ask how
a simple
many?
question. It's a very simple question. I think it's the one that's how many people know lighting, have a working knowledge of lighting. Because tip number 7 is that you should know lighting. If you're a designer, I don't care if your main emphasis is flowers. I don't care if it's fabric, whatever it is. You must know lighting, because without lighting, you can't say anything. I don't know how many times I've seen an event where they have poured $150 to $250 into an arrangement, but then they don't pin spot it, and that arrangement is sitting in the dark. So when I design a space, I literally design with lighting first. I want to know what the lighting scheme is in the room. I want to know what I'm dealing with. Fortunately, most ballrooms have great lighting schemes, so you don't have to put a lot of money into ballrooms at times. They have great lighting schemes in there. It is your right to go work with the engineer and look through all the possibilities and create a atmosphere that's great for you. But you need to know lighting, and the way you know lighting is by sitting down with your lighting guys and getting the working knowledge. It may sound a little nerdy. I literally sit down with my guys and have them show me the light fixture, explain what it does, explain what its properties are, because with that knowledge, I've become a way better designer. In fact, I'm now hired in as a lighting designer for companies. We just won an event, an Esprit Award for a wedding up in Calgary where I was the lighting designer on it. And lighting has become my passion over flowers and everything else. And I have a floral shop right over there, Yeah. And I have a big warehouse full of props, but I think about lighting first. So the things you need to know about lighting is the lighting, so everyone has a working knowledge of lighting. You got 83% that say they have a working knowledge, and that's fantastic.
I'm going to throw another one out, another quick one about adding lighting as a budget item.
Yeah, oh yeah, please do put that up. So there's 4 things. Number 1 is the dark is truly, truly your friend. I think I have another one. I'm just going to show you a quick screen share of this building here. This is another premiere, and this was one of those, premieres happen at certain times of year. Premieres are all over the city, and they go to the largest theaters, and then the event spaces around those theaters get eaten up really fast. And so this was a premiere that was added on very last minute, and so they had to go with a property that wasn't one of the best venues in the world that the client picked ahead of time. And so we're walking through the space, and it was one of those bars where your feet are actually sticking to the floor and you're afraid to put your hands underneath the table because there's a whole bunch of gum underneath there. It was a horrific room. And so this was a perfect example of the dark is your friend, because the only thing I could do is basically turn off all the lights and relight it in a way that brought their eyes to the things I wanted them to see and stay away from the things I didn't want them to see. In this space, as you can see on that back wall, I had a brick wall, so it's like great. Uplighting that wall very simply will give me textures. By the way, you know the difference between uplighting and from projecting? If I had projected on that wall, all that texture would have gone away because I had no shadow play. As soon as you uplight, then you have shadow play. So what you want to consider which way you're lighting any wall, whether you're hitting straight on or uplighting. Let's see if I have any more there. Yeah, creating bold patterns and texture. This was another premiere where I had a very, very large wall as a perimeter of the building that I needed to do something with. And so I'm counting on this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gobos that are paisley gobos that I bought for $15 from Roscoe, and then one gobo that is a glass custom gobo. Obviously, that costs some money to make that happen. But with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lighting fixtures, I filled up this entire space. So you can cover large areas. Here's another one. Like I mentioned before, I love to work with light. And I mean, I love to work with white spaces, white fabric. In this case, it was an airplane hangar, white floors. And so with one gobo, and this is a Ivy gobo pattern with from Roscoe, with a 50-degree barrel. I went with a barrel that created a very large, bold pattern on the floor, and no color. There's no color in this. I just simply dimmed it down. And when you dim a light, it goes from white light to kind of like this amber. Just dimming it down, we created this effect in this space. And by the way, I do practice what I preach. And you see this figure, the bar is the middle of the space. There's the bar right there. And basically one gobo projecting in this space in this airplane hangar. And then one more is creating these bold patterns. I don't know how many times you walked into a space. By the way, this is a before picture taken with my iPhone. I even like that they're a little blurry because it makes the after picture look that much more. It's like those pictures you take before you lose weight and after you lose weight, and it has horrible lighting, and the guy has no tan, and his hair is all messed up, and at the end he's tan, and it's amazing lighting, and his hair is perfect. So I love to do these pictures where they're just maybe even a little bit blurry as a before picture. But through my working knowledge and knowing what I was dealing with here, to me I saw opportunity. I saw blank palettes. So I basically got this, it's called a plaid pattern that you can get from Roscoe, projected it straight across the wall to create, and by the way, this is a holiday party, so I wanted gift wrapping. Created this front projection, and I knew it from this I had to project straight on, because if I projected at an angle, I would get this thing called keystone. I won't go into that right now, but just laying color on top of this. That exact same spot, I saw an opportunity, and this was done with six Lecos on both walls, 12 Lecos. I cover this entire room. The budget that I gave the AV company in-house was $8,000. So for $8,000, I got a perimeter treatment all the way around the space.
That's awesome.
And it's because I have a working knowledge of how to use the lights and how to talk to the AV guys. And they had to use conventional lights, and we created this awesome little look around the perimeter.
That is awesome.
So you have a poll. How many include lighting as a line item?
So yeah. Quite a few. And I think that that's really, if you're responsible as a planner for coming up with the design budget, I think the more information, you don't have to necessarily be what it costs you and what your upcharge. It depends what your relationship is, but to show them that there's a cost for flowers, there's a cost for fabric, there's a cost for lighting. It helps you to sort of validate why it is adding up to what it is.
And it's one of the hardest line items to sell because people just don't understand the value of lighting and why it costs what it does. And I think that's where the before and after pictures really come in handy. And I've literally sat in a space and I said, okay, turn all the lights on, house lights on, and take a picture of the space just with house lights on. And then I say, okay, turn it all down, let's put the pin spotting on, let's get everything right, take the picture again. Show those side by side, they start to understand what the value is. So, okay, tip number 8.
Okay.
Tip number 8 is staying current and finding inspiration. And we're almost running out of time, so I'm going quick. For me as a designer, one of the things that I'm concerned about, and I've been doing this a long time, one of my biggest concerns is staying relevant. Our clients are getting younger, or maybe it's that we're getting older.
No.
I think my clients are getting younger. And so they have different tastes than we have. And so if we don't evolve and stay on top of the trends, then we're not going to be serving our industry best. So you have to stay current and find inspiration. And you do that through industry publications. There's a lot of them out there. Now you have Design Dogs as a resource too, and it's being written by the best in the industry that are sending their publications in. We just had something up today on Pauline Perry from Good Gracious, who is probably one of the best caterers in the world. That's up right now. Go check it out. But there's also some magazines left. BizBash still has a quarterly magazine, and Special Event Magazine has a quarterly magazine, but there's magazines in every industry. There's hospitality magazines, hospitality design that I get on a regular basis, and then there's also fashion, lifestyle, and architectural magazines that I get on a regular basis. I'm going to show you what I do with these magazines. I am like that bride that you see on the plane tearing pictures out of their space. you're looking at right now the wall that's right behind my computer. This is my inspiration board. It literally has strips. It has strips of aluminum that are on the wall, and I just went and got a whole bunch of colored magnets, and all these pictures that I tear out of magazines go up in this wall. And they're constantly evolving. Like every 2 months, I'll go and take everything down and get all the new pictures and put the new ones up that call me and get rid of the ones that no longer call me. And this is how I stay inspired and how I use the magazines to my advantage. But you can also find inspiration within movies, television, and music because it is what's current, it's what's happening now, and let's face it, there are so many movies and television shows that become themes that are what people are asking for. Mad Men themes were crazy for a while. Everyone wanted the Mad Men theme. When, there's all kinds of themes that come out. I think there was a lot of interest around, I'm drawing a blank on the movies, but you get my point. And then, traveling for inspiration. For me, if you can't travel by internet, if you can't travel by personally travel, then get on the internet and look around. I just got back from Spain. I think I just mentioned to you, Jill. And this time I went to the north of Spain. I went to San Sebastian and Bilbao. And I went to Bilbao because I wanted to see the Guggenheim Museum. It was I got to see Yoko Ono's exhibit. It was the most bizarre and brilliant thing I've ever seen in my life. She's a bizarre woman, still creating art to this day. But the inspiration that came just from the building itself, the Guggenheim building that Gehry had created is inspirational and stuff. But walking through and seeing the architecture and then going to San Sebastian and spending a day in France and going to the wineries, there were so many different ideas. And I'd log these things by photograph all the time. In fact, my other half just gave me this, and I have to download it with all the pictures from the event, or from our trip, so we can get them up on Facebook. So if you friend me on Facebook in the next couple of days, you'll see all the pictures from the event. But those are my sources of inspiration. Not only is it inspiration, but it also allows me as an owner to shut down, to shut out everything, and just remember that there's a human side of me that needs to be nurtured as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because I think people in our industry, we work really hard and we think we have to keep going. We have to finish the proposal and get our ideas together and think about this and research. But there's a real value to just stopping and doing something that allows your brain to rest and take in new and different influences. And I think that is a really great thing, taking a vacation.
Absolutely, huge. So we have one poll on Pinterest, and by the way, we're almost out of time because I have got to run to the airport. I have to be at the gate at 12:15, which I think I have plenty of time, but I can go through these last 2 points quick. Number 9 is using Pinterest. There's a lot of ways I use it. Some people use it to just create vibe boards, but I don't because we have a lot of different tools. We use CorelDRAW. We use a 3D program to create and generate our vibe boards, which are more based on our props and our style here. But vibe boards are a great way to create a theme for clients so they can buy into the direction you're going. You just have to be careful that the clients typically will look at everything and literally look at the picture and go, oh, I'm getting that chair. It's like, no, it's just a vibe. You want to, once you actually get them to agree, show them pictures of what they're really getting so there's not a disconnect between that vibe board and what they're actually getting at the end. But vibe boards are a great way. Marketing your company, we have a Design Dogs. Doing a screen share here. A Design Dogs Pinterest page. And then using it to find inspiration, much like tearing those pieces of paper out. This is another way to do it electronically. And so I create boards on here all the time, which help me keep my ideas very organized. Like I use Environmental Inspirations, which is one of the boards on there for color palettes. And by the way, you can would love for you guys to check out my board. Follow my boards, and I will follow yours. And then another way I use it is there's the last one you see that's Troy Wedding, this one over here. Basically at a bride and groom. that had great taste and had a lot of money didn't really know what they wanted to do. So I said, okay, let's pin for a month, and you can actually have them pin on the same board with you. So the bride and the groom, the mother and father, and myself pinned for a month and a half on this board, and this is the result of everything on that board. And the key is that you have to go back and interview them on that picture, like that picture that you're seeing right there of the ladies. What was it in this picture that you really liked? Because what I see in that picture and calls to me may not be what the person that pinned it sees. So you have to go back and do the interviews. But I found this is a great way in social to do it. But also I found that now corporate is really starting to like this as well. The ones who want to be involved in the process is a great way to use Pinterest. So by marketing the company, by keeping my inspiration, and sometimes using this to create a design consensus with my clients, these are the ways I'm using Pinterest now.
Yeah.
You get a poll up about who uses Pinterest?
Yes, 86% have an account, so that's good.
A lot of people are using it.
Now I have a question for you, David.
Yeah.
Are there ways that you can hashtag certain topics to draw people to your boards? Do you know about that?
Yeah, you can. I believe you can hashtag them. This is where I would have my assistant come in and tell me how to do it. But yes, I believe you can hashtag them, and then there's trending, and there's channels. But even when you create a board, they tell you how to categorize it. So if it's interior design or flowers or themed events, you can categorize it by the way the board is created, and then you can also hashtag within the descriptions.
Yeah, cool.
So the last tip is a very simple one, and that is never stop learning. You know, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I still attend every conference I can. I try to take every class I can, even if it's a class I think I know it. I don't mind going and sitting inside that class, and you always learn, not just from the people presenting, from the people sitting next to you. But if you close yourself off from learning, then you will become irrelevant as a designer. So I try to never stop learning. I try to never stop finding inspiration, and this is how I'm going to keep myself fresh within the industry.
I'm going to ask if anybody else has any other question, if they could pop it in the chat box. And since you were talking about education,
yes.
I do want to say to David, thank you for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
This is a great value to the Special Events Institute and to the content that we offer at the Special Events Institute. We have programs, courses going on now, and we do have a wedding course that started, and it's a self-study, but there is an instructor in there, but it's open for 3 months from the time you enroll. And anyone who wants to enroll in that, I'm giving away a free copy of my wedding book, which is the second edition, was released in July. So that's just an offer for those folks that have come to this seminar today. And I did want to just say to David that just him helping out has been immense. You've done a number of webinars for us, and we really appreciate it. These go right into the courses, and they're available on our Special Events Institute YouTube page too. Yeah,
well, I believe in continuing education, so I think you've got a good thing going here.
Thank you so much, David.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm just going to see if there's any other last minute. Rochelle said thank you. Wonderful insight.
Welcome, Rochelle.
And I want to just mirror her comment. Thank you, David. You're an awesome contributor in the industry, and we really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So safe travels.
Thank you. Off to Vegas.
Off to Vegas. All right. Thanks so much for coming.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.